I think she did it because that shit Raul did. I mean, Raul did. She got a little scared, but we not gonna talk to her. Never talked to my life. That day, there's no facts of me talking to her. No anything really. I walked away and went home.
Here he comes.
Late getting arrested.
Andy Allen.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a lot of shit in his pockets. Whoa! What the hell, man?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
What's up, Lakey?
Next meeting has to be about.
Yeah.
Hello, council member.
Yeah, he knew not to go engage with Kevin. Yeah, he knew not to engage with Kevin. I think people waking up.
And there's your paper tape.
Cool.
This guy. Who's the size of it?
Yeah.
Oh, I see migrants ride their bikes like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, on e-bikes.
Yeah, they knew not to. Lincoln knew not to.
Watch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I ain't gonna do shit.
Every step you take, every bit you take.
Every step, every little step, like the song.
That's police.
It's just, yeah. Bobby Brown. Every little step. Mm-hmm. So Kevin, yeah.
Oh, they got good music. Cool. They got bouncers.
Yeah, it's Kevin Mans. I think that's his little boyfriend. So that.
I bet you Kevin hired him.
Yeah, it's Kevin Mans. He the one that tried to accuse me of fucking with the people here. Fuck with nobody here, man. This little crooked motherfucker right here. All right, let's get started, Linky. Yep.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
It's going to have to.
Unless he walks out.
It's going to have to be.
Unless he walks away. I mean.
I'm going to respect your boundaries. I'm going to respect their boundaries. Say, no, they have shit to do. Don't want to interfere with civic.
What's up, man?
Yeah, it just sounds loud to you.
Council member, yeah, how are you doing? You gotta do something about those new motorcycles. I worked in Williamsburg yesterday, your district, and I saw 30 motorcycles without plates. You gotta do something about it. You know, you can ignore me, but you can't ignore the freaking issue. I told you back in January. Council member. You gotta do something about those illegal motorcycles. Are you not afraid of DoorDash or Uber Eats? No problem.
Okay.
Let's leave Lakey alone instead of the fish.
Yeah, they can.
Professional fish. He works for MBK, this guy.
Huh?
He works for MBK.
Who?
This guy.
Me the one in the green?
Oh, no, he's just signing his name.
Yeah.
He's like shadowy.
Yeah.
All right. Respect the boundaries. Respect the civic meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we did.
Not that many people show
Killing
up.
Eric, right? Yeah.
Not that many
Nice
people.
that free meet you in person.
50 seconds.
Sorry that the sound is
Folks, mind taking a seat? We're just getting started.
but we did want to make sure that you heard the information we're about to give you and that you have an opportunity to be heard as well. And it's funny, when we were planning this event in August, I was thinking, how are we going to cool people down? And we were thinking about having like misters and ice water and all the things, and it turns out to be in the upper 60s today. So thank you all for coming out, especially since it has been raining all day, and making it here in the covered area. We were going to start the community meeting with a walking tour to actually visit the space here at Under the K Bridge Park. But what we're going to do instead is have a conversation, give you some information, answer any questions you might have, and then invite anyone who is interested to see the 7 acre space to come for a walk with us down to the park to the Newtown Creek. So that's sort of the overview. To introduce myself, my name is Katie Denny Horowitz. I'm the Executive Director of the North Brooklyn Parks Alliance. I'm joined here by several elected officials or representatives of elected officials, including to my left, Lincoln Ressler, our council member for the 33rd. Who else do we have here? We have Andrew from Assemblymember Gallagher's office. Let's see, we've got Dan from Congresswoman Velasquez's office. And we've got Catherine from Senator Kristen Gonzalez's office. So thank you all for being here. I'm gonna share a little bit of background about this organization, about this park, and then hand it over to some of my colleagues here who work on the events that take place here, so that you all have an opportunity to ask any questions. Hopefully we can answer them, and if not, feel free to reach us after the event. So I've been the executive director for about the last 5 years. I joined in 2019, which was the same year that the Under the K Bridge Park was being designed. So one of my first things was attending a number of visionings and forums, and ultimately the unveiling of the framework design for this space, which was really unlike any other space and visioning session that I had ever participated on. I have been working in parks organizations or advocacy organizations for parks, or some sort of government entity, either cultural programming with the City of New York, or revitalization programs in Manhattan. But here at North Brooklyn Parks Alliance, I had never experienced these kinds of visionings where it was almost like people were giving us these crazy ideas about what to do with the 7 acres underneath the bridge. I don't know if anyone was actually at any of those visioning sessions. Just you? We have a couple people here, and people's ideas were completely wild. And so they were things like zip lining across the creek from Brooklyn to Queens. It was kayak launching. It was large-scale events. It was extreme sports. So we took all that feedback and we came up with a design. And before I continue, I want to hear sort of a little bit about who you are before we get into the feedback that we had. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take a pause in my little intro and ask you all to introduce yourselves. So we can start over here to my left with the gentleman over here.
Just the name and the street you live on?
Just the name, the street you live on.
I'm just visiting here. I'm from South Queens. I heard you go to a Tripping concert. It was advertised in my neighborhood, so that's it.
Are you going?
A little far from me. Not my taste in music, though. It's better way.
Lincoln, Councilman, good to be with y'all.
Dan Wiley from Congresswoman Velasquez's office. I have an office in Sunnyside, Queens, and also in Brooklyn. And I live on Richardson Street. So.
Christopher Leon Johnson, a pedestrian. We need to redesign that Brooklyn Queens Expressway. Buffalo Avenue. Buffalo Avenue, Brooklyn, New York.
Maureen Tabali, Monument Street. Michelle Chesnick, Apollo Street.
Matt McLean, Apollo Street. Rich, Apollo Street.
Jim Apollo Street.
Nice.
Eric Hume, Beetle, between Van Wert Porter.
Kyle Casey, I live on DeKalb Avenue.
Gary, 101 different. Gary.
Diego.
Diego, I live on Wentworth Street.
My name's Kevin. I live on Diamond Street.
My name is Emrys, and I live on Cumberland Street.
I live on Dallas.
Kingsland, some housemen. Lynn and Carrie are on our staff here at North Brooklyn Parks Alliance, so feel free to go up to them if you have any questions. We have a few staff members who live on Houseman. So going back to the park, it opened in 2019. Does anyone remember when it opened? What it was like?
May?
Yeah. It was during the height of COVID, and it was a very quiet opening because at the time it was really uncertain what type of programming we were going to have and how we could really congregate in public space. So even though the park has been open for 4 years, really only the last year or two, we've had a lot of events taking place there. More people have come either from word of mouth or just because people are really starting to live and go back to their regular lives like before COVID. So in the first season, we had a lot of community programming. I bring up COVID because that was the first season that we invited folks to come do events here at the park, because part of the visiting session that I mentioned was really an opportunity to see what kind of programming, see what kind of recreation, see what kind of activity is possible in this particular space. This is an L space, meaning it's underneath an elevated expressway, and it was a space that people didn't really have a lot of familiarity with when you're thinking about how to design parks. So really thinking outside the box, but hamstrung by these COVID regulations, we started getting inquiries from really local Brooklyn-based cultural organizations, most of whom weren't able to do programming in their own spaces that they had been used to because there maybe were restrictions at the time. And I bring this up because, the reason we're hosting this meeting tonight is to be able to give some background on the park, the events happening at the park, how we're managing the events happening at the park, and then what we're doing throughout the neighborhood as a result of the events happening at the park. And I understand that some of these events have impact on the neighborhood outside of the 7 acres. We're at the sort of entrance. For those of you who haven't been here, it's 7 linear acres going from Van Dam to the creek. And we want to be able to, A, be here to answer any questions, and B, just make sure you have the information you need if you come across something that you see and you want to let us know. So at this point, I might introduce my partners. So Lincoln, perhaps you.
Thanks so much, Kate. Should I use this? Should I use this? Yeah. Okay, good. I'll use my shot, but it's still not enough. We're right next to the it's good to be with you all, and I really want to thank Katie and the North Brooklyn Parks Alliance team for helping to bring us together tonight. We had heard concerns from a few neighbors about some of the events that have been happening under the Cape Bridge. I just wanted to create a space where we could talk through them, work through them, and address issues to the best of our ability. When North Brooklyn Parks Alliance was originally started, it's been almost 20 years, right? 21 years. Let's not get too drunk. 21 years ago, and it was the Open Space Alliance. But from its very early beginnings, one of the ways in which this organization has helped to raise resources is to organize concerts that generate money that then get reinvested in our parks. And it's been an effective tool to improve the conditions in our parks. The North Brooklyn Parks Alliance is our conservancy for every park in Williamsburg and Greenpoint. So they are our partner as we work to improve parks conditions, improve maintenance, have more cleanup, have more programming in our parks, have more beautiful plantings in our parks. The North Brooklyn Parks Alliance helps make that happen. And so, when we, my office and other partners help provide resources to support NBPA, it has a direct impact on our experience in the parks in our community. And similarly, the concerts the events that we have that are held under the Cape Bridge generate resources that are directly invested in our parks. But be very, I spoke to Katie in advance of the event this evening, or our conversation this evening, and we just, I know Katie and her team want to be responsive to the issues that people may be experiencing. We've heard of a very modest number of complaints in our office, 311 complaints directly to the Parks Alliance, but that's not to say we don't take every complaint really seriously. And so if there are issues on Apollo Street, if there are issues on Kingsland or on Houseman, we want to work through and address them. I think Katie has good solutions around sound testing, good solutions around crowd control. We want to make sure that NBPA and their partners are doing an excellent job in mitigating issues in the neighborhood. That is why we're having this conversation tonight, and we want to make it a productive and constructive conversation. So we look forward to hearing from people about specific issues that the NBPA team and other partners can address, and my office is here to help any way that we can. So thanks so much for having me, and thank you, Katie, for helping me in the meeting.
Yes, okay. Thank you for that. So moving forward, at this point, we've had, we have a little more than 24 events per season. That's grown increasingly from when we opened it as a public park in 2021. Those events range in size. Some of them are just a few hundred people that are free and open to the public, and some of them are a few thousand people. And at this point, leading up to May of 2024, we didn't hear a lot from the community. Before we launched this season, we did an analysis of 311 complaints, and I think 89% of the 70 events that we had had the first 3 years didn't have a single 311 complaint. So we organized this season with a lot of confidence in how we were managing the events. My office had received one inquiry in 2022 about the noise. The community board hadn't received any emails or notices. And so when we were planning, and when I say planning, I mean, doing things like how many events we were going to do, what scale they were going to be, the hours of the events, we hadn't quite tested events that were large enough to impact the community, in that we hadn't heard from the community at that point in any sort of quantifiable way, right? The way you usually try to go around the community and understand where you might have an impact. So barring any sort of specific feedback, we started this season at a larger scale than last season, which is why we've had an increase in inquiries in the last few weeks. Starting in May, last few months I should say, starting in May, that has impacted some traffic at certain hours, or there's been an uptick in inquiries. I know the council member received a few, the community board did receive one about 2 weeks ago, but we also haven't received any direct inquiries either. So part of the reason I'm coming to you all today is because I want to make sure that you know how to reach us. You know who to call if you come across anything, because if we don't know where something is happening or what you're experiencing, then we can't fix it. Part of the reason I wanted to have this event now is because we do have a few larger events happening in the fall. So we wanted to get your feedback now so that we can make any changes to that to that end of the season as necessary. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. I have two folks here, one from my team and one from a production consultant who's intimately involved with the what's happening on the outside of the events during the events. They're going to sort of talk to you about the measures that we do on sound, the people we have in the streets, how we're managing traffic, how we should be managing traffic better. But for right now, I wanted to sort of explain a little bit more about the North Brooklyn Parks Alliance. Lincoln alluded to it, that we are a 20-year-old nonprofit organization. We're a public-private partnership, so we work with the Parks Department, but not just the Parks Department. We also work with the city's city's Department of Transportation on their open streets and public plaza programs. We work with the Parks Department on not only parkland, but also little green streets or even as small as street trees in the area. And then we work with state DOT because this property, beginning here all the way to the creek, is state property with the Department of Transportation. So a bunch of different agencies we work with as it relates to public space management. And that's really our role in this community. We provide direct services, mostly in the realm of operations. So operations could mean things like storm drain cleaning, dog run maintenance, street tree care, or things like horticulture, and that's having dedicated gardeners in some of our largest parks, like McGowan Park, Bushwick Inlet Park, here, of course, under the K Bridge Park. Or it could also mean horticultural advice or guidance or targeted parks improvement projects across the neighborhoods, working with community gardens, school gardens, or community groups on stewardship programs. One of the things about Under the K Bridge Park that we've really been trying to talk about this year, I know we're here about the events, but I also have to talk a little bit about the environmental impact that the space is having, because a lot of the reason that I think there was such experimental ideas during the visionings is because it's such an experimental place. And we have interpreted that as environmental experimentation. So right now we launched what we're calling a Rewild Brooklyn initiative, and that is inspired by 2 horticultural programs that we launched right from Under the K right here. And one of them is a natives nursery where we are cultivating tens of thousands of native plant species. That's a nursery that is down by the Newtown Creek. About 50 different varieties, and the purpose of that isn't just to grow plants, it's actually to grow a certain kind of indigenous plant that could actually provide an intervention into the soil of North Brooklyn, which many of you know has had extreme environmental impact. And when you think about gardens at a place like a green triangle next to the BQE, in the intersection of 2, if not 3 Superfund sites, it's not just any normal green space. It is one that needs a tremendous amount of care, a tremendous amount of, for lack of a better word, academic background and scientific approach to basic gardening. We also kicked off a seed exchange program. So with that in mind, we work with Native Greenbelt, which is another nursery out on Staten Island. We have a 3-year program where we have transformed, if any of you know that large hill in what we call Flex 2, which is 2 parcels down, the large hill is now a platform for a seed exchange program where we're cultivating wildly collected seeds from the tri-state area that are a rare native plant species, and we are growing the plants, harvesting the seeds, distributing them throughout the neighborhood, and returning them to the Native Plant Center out on Staten Island. So we're one of 4 locations in the city where that's taking place. And so in this way, we also have with a garden club where once a month we have volunteer programs down here at the nursery where we are either planting, we are weeding, in some cases we're building bee hotels. And so that's one way that we're trying to draw the public in, building off of volunteer programs and walking tours that we've been providing here at the space for the last 3 years. So before we get into the events management, and I wanted to hold off on any specific questions about particular noise because we have, or particular intersections because we are going to have a specific time where we want to collect that feedback in a more strategic way. Does anyone have any general organizations about anything I've said so far?
Yes.
So I will keep going. So The events, as I said, circling back to the beginning of the conversation, started in 2021, the first year we opened. And one of our first programs was something called Reggae on the Boardwalk being Coney Island. And at the time, Coney Island was not giving out permits, and it was during COVID. And so we hosted them for free, and it was a free program, and it was a way to bring people together at the time when people weren't really coming together very often, unless it was outside, and there's restrictions about being outside. So we kind of were a little bit of a breath of fresh air for cultural producers. But it also sort of started this destination for some other Brooklyn organizations. Shortly thereafter, we started partnering with House of Yes, which is a venue and cultural organizations out in Bushwick. They too were looking for a place to continue their programming outside of their venue, which was shuttered because of COVID. So in this sort of organic way, we started building these partnerships and attracting audiences and kind of identifying the space with some of these communities. And you had mentioned the Chutney Festival, and the Caribbean community is one. And I think it really did launch with the reggae programs that we started doing sort of organically for free back in 2021. It's really become a destination for the Caribbean community, and through House of Yes also with the queer community. And so this is a space that in our minds has really become a place where communities, especially marginalized communities, do have a place to have programming. So over the last 2 seasons it has grown, and so our partnerships with producers, with cultural organizations has also grown. And I think with that growth, that's what you're here for today, right? So there are growing pains in that, as we have larger scale, as we experiment with different kinds of, let's just say, traffic plans or events management plans. This is the first season that we are doing some of these events at a certain scale. And so in order to execute these events perfectly, which it will be perfect one day, but right now, it is in a way that we want to work with you to make sure that we are striving for as close to perfection as possible. The talent also is getting higher, profile. So, we have like Madonna here and Bjork. And so when that happens, there are a lot of people who come, and that means a lot of cars are coming. It's something we're aware of. And so with that, I wanted to turn it over to my colleagues, Lynn and Kyle. So Lynn is someone who spends a lot of time at these events, and then also around the neighborhood talking to people and monitoring the sound. And I also want to introduce Kyle. Kyle, even though I didn't know him at the time, worked on a number of productions of ours throughout the neighborhood. The ones that Lincoln had mentioned, back in the early aughts, or basically until 2005 till 2018, when we were doing concerts at the McCarran Pool, concerts on the waterfront, the Northside Festival. Kyle actually was producing or worked on the production for a number of those events, and has also been working on the recent events where we started to hear from you. So I wanted to have them in particular come and give you a presentation about what we're doing directly surrounding the area in order to help mitigate any sort of impact on our neighbors and local residents.
Great. We'll use tools. I'm also an incredibly loud New Yorker. I don't tend to eat. We need it. We need a mic back there. I can get you a little listening. So this map here is of our neighborhood. It's not the entire district. This is the Pulaski, this yellow line here. And this kind of highway, if we follow it to the water's edge, this is under the cable. So the blue dots here, these little pins, those are all the places we actually walk around and monitor with an decibel reader. We do it almost for every single show. We do it several times a night. We go both into Queens. We go all around this neighborhood. And then the green are traffic posts. So not every single show is the same. They don't all warrant the same amount of traffic. Mitigation for management. But if there was a traffic post, those would kind of be where we set up to start to manage it. So the furthest we go, I forget who you are, I think Eric. Over on Beetle, I go to 123 Beetle pretty regularly. I actually wanted to buy a house at 125 Beetle. It's still too expensive. So that's kind of as far as we go. I do have a friend that lives on Division in Oregon over there, and he works in my sound, so he actually does reads too up there. And I have a colleague that lives in Hoover Housing, and he does reads for me out there. Anywhere that I don't personally have to walk around all night or drive around all night to read, we try to partner with people who either work in sound or work in the industry or live in the neighborhood for a really long time to also just give us an animal reads. We spend quite a bit of time on Houseman. So just to be really clear, most of my time is in our neighborhood. It's what I could walk to, it's what you all could hear. I live on Humboldt between Nassau and Driggs. I grew up on Houseman between Nassau and Driggs. I didn't go very far. For a very long time for our shows, we only really walk down Driggs. This is the arm, we come up here. If I could hear me at Barrack, which is at next crossing, I know I already have a problem. We don't really have those problems too often anymore. That was maybe year one. In the plaza, I should hear nothing. This should be around 50 to 70 decibels, depending on the truck traffic. It's almost exclusively truck traffic here. And for the most part, I was always walking on Driggs. From Driggs to Sutton, from Driggs to Humboldt, it depended, but that was my route. And then one of my neighbors on Houseman, or Morgan, I think it was Morgan, off the corner of one of the new buildings that's there, they said they could hear me. And I was like, that's crazy. I can't hear anything here on Driggs or Beaker. So then we started taking reads over on Nassau. And so we do quite a bit of concentration going back and forth. And we also do the middle of the block. The sound is different. Sometimes the avenues eat up the sound. Like, I don't think we're hearing anything. Mostly this giant highway is swallowing most of the sound. But if we go to Nassau, it's a little different. If we're in the middle of the block, it's a little different. So we do spend quite a bit of time. And anyone who has specifically reached out, there's only a handful. We make sure we go to their house quite specifically to take reads. I've even gotten to go inside many people's homes, which is slightly weird. But for some people invite me in, and I go, which is also probably not the wisest thing to do, but still alive. So anyway, this is just to give you a sense of the map. And, I think also, I grew up here. I remember the concerts back in the day. They were incredibly loud. They were and they were apparent, and I felt like they were in my living room when they did sound check. I was also a teenager. Maybe it didn't bother me as much, and old and cranky. But you shouldn't hear it. It shouldn't be something you feel is inside your house, and that's something we're actively working on.
So one of the things we want to do is, if you are hearing it, we do have some extra push pins here, so you will know exactly.
We were complaining and nobody goes out the border. We were sending emails. They say, you guys saying that we're not supposed to do it, but we do it on border.
Sunnyside.
Okay.
Your left hand.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
Keep going. Keep on left, up there. A mile away in Sunnyside. Yes.
So before, I want to hear exactly where it is, but before you do, I wanted Kyle, because I know there are two issues. One is sound and one is traffic. So I wanted Kyle to kind of talk through what we refer to as a traffic plan or a perimeter plan, and then I want to open it up to hear more specifics.
Sound does
Hello,
carry
everybody.
the water.
So the green elements are where the traffic positions are, as Lynn mentioned, and they are different for different size and scales of the events that are happening.
Fascinating.
Part of what the design is meant to do is to prevent as much traffic backup as possible. One thing that we have identified is the light right here is a major issue. Coming down Beaker, heading towards the highway, the light on Beaker, basically at Apollo, is a 7-second light. and when there is an increased amount of traffic that is occurring here because of activity, whether it be the industrial activity that's happening during the daytime or towards night, and certainly when there are more vehicles that are down here because of the activity that's happening under the bridge. The activity that's happening under the bridge, what's happening at that light is it's backing up traffic 3 blocks. And then people get frustrated when they see, you know, this light coming off the on-ramp here lasts somewhere between 1:30 seconds and 2 minutes, depending on, I'm not an expert on the way the traffic lights work, but I sat here and I measured it, so I can tell you that that's the case. People are getting frustrated as they're backed up here, so people are laying on their horns, and that's causing a major issue. We recognize that that's a problem. So
yeah, and that's even without the events. If you live over here or work over here, that's always happening.
What Lynn said is that it's not just an event issue. If you live over here, you understand that's something that happens all the time. So, from my purview, from standing out here and looking at the way that this has happened at all points in the day and night, that is a major issue for the neighborhood. And it's something that we are trying to start to address with the Department of Transportation.
And I think also crowd management as well. So it's hard to know how people are going to get to this area, how people are going to get to this park until they actually do. So after the first few larger scale events, we realized where people were coming from, how people were getting here, that they were coming, for example, walking from the L train, so you might have a lot of people coming from, you know, just behind you on their way here. And so identifying these spots, which part of the only reason it was brought to my attention is because one resident across the street, who we know pretty well, reached out and then told us. And so we can't address your concerns again unless we hear them. So I think at this point we do want to turn it to you all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to know, like, why won't you guys just hire a contract security company? Why won't you guys just start banning large scale events? If you guys can mitigate the noise, just ban large scale events.
Of course, we have a contract.
No, ban large scale events until you figure out how you handle large scale events.
I think the point of the meeting is to hear from neighbors.
No. We live in Brooklyn too. We vote in Brooklyn too. We could vote. I could vote in Brooklyn too, bro. I could vote. You were Brooklyn Borough president. I had to vote for you, right? Come on, man. I kept stop playing, man. I'm asking the right question, man. Come on, bro. Lincoln, get out of here, man.
We absolutely have security that is beyond the regulated requirements for any event. That what I mean is, like, the number of people for any given event is tied to the number of guards is tied to the number of people. So the capacity of the event is going to determine what the security plan is and what the traffic plan is, and the quantity of guards, whether they be traffic guards or security guards. So yes, every single event, and it's less about security and it's more about traffic. Yes, Eric.
Can you tell us what laws regulate this venue specifically? The maximum number of people allowed, what time the venue has to shut down, and what the maximum what the maximum noise levels are, and the type of enforcement that follows.
So it's regulated by the rules and the laws of New York City and New York State. We are open from dawn until dusk, 7 days a week. Open to the public. When a part of
specifically for concerts. For the concerts, that's what we want to know.
Yes, for the events, we have an internal regulation where we want to keep it below 100 decibels directly inside the space. Outside the space, we don't want it to get above like 40 or 50. And like Lynn said, that is something that is. We monitor and document at every single space, every single dot on that map, and it's usually about like 51 to 55 on those spaces, and a lot of that is truck traffic. And if that's not what you're experiencing, I'd love to know where you live so that we can visit.
I live in Nassau and Morgan, right here in my apartment.
Yeah, So definitely write that down because we want to come to your place and monitor it. Sound is something that you can manage, right? And so when we've heard from feedback, we've heard feedback.
My question is why the parties are allowed to be till 4 a.m.? If other places you have to be shut down by 10 p.m., 11 p.m., 10 p.m. is the night.
We're not, we don't have events until 4 a.m.
There have been many events that have gone
way past 4 o'clock. Yeah. There have been a few that went on until midnight. They did not get them out.
There are a few events that go until 2 a.m. The vast majority end at 10
So why
o'clock.
the website says it's 4 a.m. from 4 p.m. to 4 a.m.?
We don't have events until 4 a.m. I don't
There's websites that say that.
If websites say that, we can ask them to turn it down. All I know is that I'm at every event, and I am certain that I can tell you that I've never turned off the sound past 2 a.m.
But even still, 2 a.m.
Especially on the Sunday.
There are a few events that have gone until 2 a.m.
Yeah.
The vast majority are until 10 p.m.
Excuse me, those chutney festivals do go on and on. I told you,
The chutney festival that you cited is over at 9 p.m. on Sunday.
Oh, it is on 9 p.m. Okay, let's
It's-
see about
it's-
that, people.
it's-
They usually those are
it's from
rages. They
1
go on
p.m.
for
to
they go
9
on for like 2, 3 in the morning.
The ones here end at either 9 or 10.
Really? Wow.
So
That's
I can't speak to
I live on
events.
Apollo Street. I've been up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I've heard music going on down here at 3 o'clock in the morning. I've got a 2-year-old son. He's got a 3-year-old son, and lives across the street from me, and we can hear it clear as day. And that's we've had that on Saturday nights, Sunday nights, and I'm sorry, but there's no reason there should be that loud of music past 11 o'clock, and especially with as many young kids in this neighborhood as we have. And then the traffic goes on for an hour after that. You hear, honk, 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 honk.
And a lot of people from South Queens are going to this chutney festival. So you're going to see nothing but people driving over here. I'm actually curious where these people are going to park.
And what about the after parties? What about the after parties? Will you close?
There's also, yes.
Let me
there's
ask.
also after parties.
Will you? Let me imagine.
Blow up the bridge. Blow up the Kosciuszko Bridge. Get rid of the cars. Good.
It's hard to hear when everybody's talking over one another.
I want to know, are these events charging money? Are these events charging money? Like, who's paying for all this and who's making money from all this?
Maybe we should ask Linky that.
The North Brooklyn Parks Alliance is a nonprofit. We are district-wide, and we also partner with the state to manage this 7-acre park. Part of the financial model of the park, because we don't get any money from the city or the state to manage any of these spaces. So when we were having a concept to change this space, transform it from kind of an abandoned, derelict waterfront of the Newtown Creek, the idea was to have it be a public space. But then, of course, that begs the question, how are you going to pay for a 7-acre park? So part of the design and original business model for the space was to allow these kinds of events, or at least events where money is earned, to be able to pay for the park maintenance of the 7-acre park that we keep open to the public 7 days a week. We have a whole team here. We build facilities, operations management, and the majority of the revenue earned, and the way that the business model works is that they are ticketed events, not always, but for the ones that I think you all are here for, those are ticketed events. And we charge essentially like a rental fee to the event producer, and the producer is the one that receives like the ticket prices that you referred to. And with the rental fee, we're able to pay for things like the lights in the park, the irrigation for the park, the plants, the maintenance crew, the graffiti removal, and then we're actually able to earn enough to actually go out into the neighborhood for additional services in the horticultural operations programs. So at this point, we have a staff of just over 20 people that do provide direct service here, specifically in Greenpoint and Williamsburg. 65% of that staff, which is primarily all new, are either born and raised or have lived here in Greenpoint and Williamsburg for recent history, and everyone who works for us is based in Brooklyn. So there is a tremendous amount of workforce development that we're able to provide for the neighborhood, on top of the services of, whether it's gardening or park maintenance or operational facilities maintenance. That's where the money goes.
And I think this is such an important question. So they have an agreement with the Parks Department, and the North Brooklyn Parks Alliance is able to have their staff go into our parks and help improve conditions. So the North Brooklyn Parks Alliance pays for a gardener that works in the Lower Park. They help improve the conditions for the dog run in the Lower Park. They've helped address all the overgrown weeds and issues we've had in Busherman Park. They've helped with tree plantings and tree care around the neighborhood. So when we have issues in any of our parks, they're our primary partner. They have a special agreement with the Parks Department where they can come in and improve conditions and try and make things better. And they do a lot. They do a lot to improve the parks in our community. And the revenue that they generate from the concerts is put directly back in. 100% of it goes back into either maintaining this park here or the other parks in our community. So this is why, I'll tell you, I'm the first person to complain that we have issues with concerts around the neighborhood that I think are problematic. The concerts here generate resources that go to supporting our community and improving our experience in our parks. And that's why it's something that I'm supportive of. But that being said, if we have specific issues from any building here where you're hearing noise from music and it's a problem, we want to address it. They go out directly to people's homes whenever there's a concert and test for the noise. But we need to, if there's people that they haven't reached, that's why we want to have this meeting, so that we can go and test and make sure that we're addressing the noise. I know there's some crowd control issues that have been raised tonight, and frankly they need to be addressed better, but we'll address them. And we'll address them together, what about, that's why we want your feedback, so that we can work on it. We're going to take questions from neighbors.
No, what about closing the park, bro? Like, come on, man. I vote in Brooklyn too, man. Come on, man. Like, after 9 o'clock. Like...
I'm not sure, you mentioned you emailed someone, I'm not sure who you emailed, but we did set up, just for lack of a better word, a hotline. So this is a number specifically for noise complaints or event-related complaints that if you do experiencing something as it happens, historically, we have a bunch of neighbors. Historically, we have a bunch of neighbors throughout the immediate area who have my cell phone number or folks on our staff's cell phone number, so I would just get direct texts. That's not necessarily helpful for people who don't have my number, which is why we set up a dedicated line just for this. So I would say if you're experiencing something, please contact us here. And if that wasn't, clear before on how to reach us, or that we're the ones to reach, then hopefully you know now. Yes.
So, if somebody calls and leaves a message,
when someone reaches out to us during an event, we send someone to that location immediately.
Even if it's 2 o'clock?
Even if it's 2 a.m.
Listen to this?
Yes.
So it's basically your version of 311.
Sure. I called it a hotline. You call it 311. That's like Kleenex of the utilities.
What about closing the park at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock?
So, just real quick, going back to the events going until 2 o'clock in the morning, so on and so forth. I emailed your office last year complaining about it, to which the response I was giving was just, well, they filed the proper permits. Now, to the best of my knowledge, is outdoor events are supposed to be done by 11 o'clock. And I know Forest Hills Stadium is 10:30. And I don't understand how an event can be allowed outdoors going until 2 o'clock in the morning, especially when it's so close to residential. And it's so disruptive to us on a Sunday evening. And as I've stated before, there's a lot of children in this neighborhood. and it's very frustrating.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I also have children in the neighborhood, and I certainly don't want any impact on your families. I mean, the questions that y'all are asking about, the park closure or the sound ordinances, part of the reason why it's an ordinance as opposed to the law is because there's sort of flexibility for certain kinds of locations. And so again, part of the reason why we did have the ability to do that was because we had a 3-year history of not really having any complaints, right? So there was like, I don't know who you were reaching out to, but
I reached out to government. Yeah,
sure.
The government.
Yeah.
He don't respond to emails. That's why. He doesn't respond to emails. So now you gotta respond to. He responded.
There were no. We had 2 events out of 70 that had 311 complaints. So in that way, it was very difficult to justify or know that you are being impacted in that way. Yes.
I think part of the problem over here is that a lot of people feel dissatisfied with the level of response that they have gotten for their complaints going back 3 years to when this venue first opened. So here's what my suggestion is. I'm going to attribute this to growing pains, since this is a new venue and this is a new type of event in this neighborhood. I would like to suggest that we have a follow-up meeting maybe later on this year or early next year as more plans are developed for the upcoming season, so that we have time to digest what we have learned over here, what we've discussed, and put together a more comprehensive plan going into 2025. And let's find out how well this type of feedback has worked also. Because I think that if people come together like this and have the opportunity to have some face-to-face time with you, this is a little bit more empowering, and it feels like there's a more meaningful connection with people's complaints and their concerns.
Absolutely, and to be honest, that's one reason why we wanted to do it here, because we wanted to come as close to your homes as possible, assuming that the people who live the closest are the ones being impacted. So it was important for us to come here to talk face-to-face, because I heard that people felt that way, but at the same time, I religiously check 311. I check with the precinct. I check with the community board. I check with our elected officials. And in any of those, there were either no issues that were submitted, or there were that many. And so again, the part of the purpose is not just to be here to have that dialogue, but also to set up these kinds of mechanisms so that you can provide it. Because again, I'm not sure who you were reaching, or if he reached the council member. I don't know if Lincoln's up at 2 a.m. To let me know that someone reached out to him, but that's certainly not the most direct route to give us your feedback.
I think that having a standardized means of collecting complaints, reporting these complaints in one location with one person, and keeping it within our community, because that's really important. I think that would be the best way to go forward, because then we don't have 311 or the precinct or Lincoln. We have one location, one person.
I think it's a very good point. I'm really pleased that the First Alliance has set up this hotline so that people can reach out directly with specific issues and complaints. I think that what Katie was sharing is that between my office, her organization, and the precinct and 311, in aggregate, across all of them, we've received a handful of complaints over multiple years of concerts. So this is not a situation where we've been barraged or bombarded by complaints. People are not shy about reaching out to me, or to Katie, or to 311, or the precinct, when they have issues, or I know there are other elected officials, and of course, Assemblyman Gallagher and Senator Gonzalez's office should chime in here too. We want to hear from you, though, and address every single issue. If it's 5 complaints, we want to make sure we're mitigating them and solving them so that your quality of life and your experience is better. That's our goal. So we want to make sure that every person that's here, if there's noise complaints that you're concerned about the concert, that North Brooklyn Parks Alliance is going out to, and Congressman Nebraska's office too. If there are noise complaints about the concerts, they'll go out and do testing. If there's issues around the crowd control when the concert ends, then we want to know the specific locations where you're having issues so that we can have a better staffing plan to better reduce that noise. Those are the reasons that we're here, and I think having ongoing communication with neighbors is great. We want to make sure that you have a way to reach out directly to the North Brooklyn Parks line so they can solve issues in real time when you identify.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. Why can't we just, if you want to have the concert, why can't they end at a decent time? By 10:30, 11 o'clock. Why must they end at 2 in the morning? Number two, is there a way to contact the local police department and get a ton of traffic controllers here that night and say, you can't come down residential streets at 1 or 2 in the morning, they're blasting your music still from the body, honking horns, go down and all the way around where the factories are. Stop coming down the local streets. And if you have to get traffic agents, that's what we have to do. There's something has to be done. Because at 2 o'clock in the morning or at 12 o'clock, I'm blasting my TV because I can't hear it. Or I'm like, all right, I'll just shut it off and I'll go inside and I'll read or do something. I mean, you know, because something has to be done. The concerts have to stop at a decent time. I mean, 2 o'clock in the morning is ridiculous when people have children. And to come down the block at 1, 2 in the morning, honking horns, walking down the block, making music, I mean, screaming, yelling, it's unacceptable, it really is. And you have to be conscious of that. You have to understand our point of view.
One thing is that, again, we just started hearing these complaints, so, you know, we did already have a full season that's been underway since last year, so there isn't much we can do for this season, but we'll definitely take your feedback into consideration for the future in terms of the end times. And I'm glad you brought up cars with loud music, because a separate issue, and one that we have a lot less control over, is the car parties. And if you live around here, you know what I mean, my car parties. And so, you know, you mentioned 3 or 4 in the morning. There have been several instances when there is an event that ends and we're closed up and we vacate, and as we're closing up the gate, 100 cars with speakers strapped to their tops of their cars will come in. Mm-hmm. And then there's a very long cat and mouse chase between, you know, that car party and the precincts in this neighborhood over to Queens and back. And so when I analyze the 311 data, or if I hear when people say, I was hearing music at 3 a.m., please know that if you're hearing music at 3 a.m., that is not coming from under the K Bridge.
It's coming from their own cars. You're going to hear that at the
So I wanted to just say that and let you ask a question.
I'm just curious if people knew the numbers of how these bigger events are actually revenue for the parks and stuff, how you might change your mind about inconvenience for a day or two, because if it really was cleaning up parks and weeds, and I am in love with Memorial Park. It's my safe space. So if people knew the numbers of what you're generating from these concerts, could that change minds for any convenience? But these amazing things you're getting in the neighborhood that you wouldn't necessarily be getting because of these events.
This is a hopefully one page where she's interesting of some of how the North Brooklyn Parks Lights helps our community.
Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say, and I could go on a whole soliloquy about the lack of parks funding for the Parks Department, and and we are an active, avid member of the Play Fair Coalition, which advocates and calls for 1% of the city's budget to go to the Parks Department. But in the system that we have right now, with an agency that's underfunded, whether it's Sanitation Department or Parks Department, these public-private partnerships are part of how the city is modeled at the moment. Yes.
Thanks, Katie. I came here actually just to say how much the BMX community appreciates the programming under the park. Andrew York and World Bike Shoppers organized an event here, and they're really, they do appreciate that. So just wanted to communicate that.
Well, the BMX and the skaters, I always say like anything with me.
Hi, yeah. Clay and I live on Apollo's.
I know you. I know that guy. You got a haircut.
I'm here near me. I'm a teacher, so I can shout a lot. But I'm here nearly every day with my 3-year-old son because he loves big machinery and big trucks, and it's a perfect place for him to see. So if you ever want to find me, just 5:30, I'll be there. So I, not it. So I appreciate that the park is here, and my son loves it too, and he loves climbing on, like, he learned to walk partly on this walkway here. That said, I have to 100% agree with what a lot of my neighbors have said about noise and traffic, because the honking on Apollo Street is bad enough during the day, but when it's 2 a.m. and it wakes me up, and it wakes him up, that's totally out of the other thing that I want to bring up are 2 issues related to just general communication about events and about closures in event preparation and takedown. Since I'm here 6 days a week, my son and I love to go down to the creek, but it's often blocked off because where the skate park is, it's often, that section is entirely closed a lot, so we can't actually get through it. And it would be nice to have one side of that open so we can just walk past whatever event, stage, sound system preparation is going on. And then secondly, if there's going to be some massive, I don't know what the capacity is, 3,000, however many thousands of people come here, if there's going to be a massive event, there has to be some way that we can find out and know about it beforehand. On your website, there was an information board there that never had anything on it, but like public posters around the neighborhood, just something that we know in advance, like, okay, hey, it's
But
good.
that requires more money to do that.
I mean, it's not that much. It's not that much. I'm asking for, like, a couple posters here and there.
Yeah, it just those are costs that happen.
I mean, or like on your website, or just something that we know what's going on. One more point.
One more point that I know one of my neighbors makes. This is a very short notice for this meeting, but Eric, hopefully any follow-up we have more notice. It's great that there's all this diverse programming, but we don't know about it. And it would be great to have also programming that's targeted for the people who live right here. I don't know, senior citizens night, a family's block party day, or something like that, where people who live here are more apt to come to the park.
Will you donate
even if you
it
don't
to
have a son who loves
Why? Will you pay for those events?
Well, you did free events for others, so why
It's
can't
not a
you
free
do
event,
for
they're paying for the venue. You guys don't
The
understand
neighborhood
the cost
should
of
get a
going
free
into
event.
parks. I don't understand the
You have a framework that they make for the table.
Yeah, that's fine. You can do it here.
Accessibility is something that we're working on, especially I love that idea of creating a pathway. Because the one parcel, what I mean by parcel is, right, you have this section here that we call the arm, and several other parcels inside as you go to the waterfront. Parcel 1, which is where the skating area is the one that we try to limit the least amount possible. In part because it's very difficult to get to the water because of the surrounding industrial streets. It's not like, oh, just go around, right? Because you've got a street that doesn't really look like a street, but is a street, but isn't a street? Not sure. In any event, it's covered in trucks, and so accessibility is absolutely something that we're considering how to improve in the future, especially as it relates to what we call the first parcel where the skating park is. And in answer to your question about community programming, I mean, we do so much community programming. We do have volunteer programs every week that take place here on site, where we invite the public in either for walking tours or workshops or planting events. We do community events in pretty much every public space in the neighborhood. When it comes to commercial events, it is considered, and again, this is property that is the state of New York, which means it's serving not just the local community, but also, the people of the state of New York, right? It's like it's a state place in the same way that, it's meant to be a destination, both culturally and open space-wise, for what we like to emphasize environmentally, not just for this neighborhood, but also for neighborhoods beyond. And so all that to say is, I agree with you. We could definitely up the community programming, if we're able to increase our capacity to do so.
Thanks, Katie. My name is Kevin. I live over on Diamond Street. I grew up on Meserole Avenue, and tonight I just want to talk about what the one woman was saying about McGolrick. Back in 2020, when the city had cut so much money from parks in the middle of the COVID crisis.
Park is so messed up. There's water constantly
Oh my God, it's so much better.
Thank you. So one of the big problems in McGolrick Park, as folks know, is around Russell, there was a lot of mudslides, and that whole area was covered in mud. And we formed a volunteer group back in 2020 in the summer when there was garbage piled up in the parks and all these issues and problems. And spent a lot of time. This was dozens of volunteers, and we shoveled the sidewalks and shoveled the paths. And one of the main reasons why we were able to do that was because of the support and materials from North Brooklyn Parks Alliance. And that was really a key and critical part of that. And then in more recent days, as the Friends Group, as the COVID crisis went away, when the Friends Group came back to take care of the park, the support for gardeners and the support for materials and support for programming came from North Brooklyn Parks Alliance. So I think that's just important. I spent a lot of time in McGolrick, and I just think that this is something that there's so much that they provide to our neighborhood that the parks, so many of our parks are in such disrepair. The city doesn't invest in Greenpoint in the way that it ought to. This is something that is in Cooper Park, and it's in McGolrick Park, and it's in McCarran. And we see what these parks look like day to day and how much worse they are when they're not invested in. So I think that's just something I just want to say from my own personal experience, shoveling mud and snow and cracking ice around McGolrick Park. Anyway, so yeah, thank you.
Yeah, she keep with the
water. I just want to echo what Kevin's saying, how much North Brooklyn Parks Alliance has helped from part of the neighborhood, which is around Kingston, around Spring, and I've seen them putting up different tree beds and planting flowers in places that have neglected for years. And in terms of public programming, I do come to a lot of the learning club events, different community events with different people, but I definitely encourage you to come. You'll learn a ton. And also, you'll get to watch this park, especially really awesome. If you haven't been down to the water, I think join on this kind of events, because the way it's transformed since 2020 is remarkable, and it's because
the winky table.
events they're hosting.
The luxury winky table.
Particularly with places like some open streets, the plantings that are there, a lot of that is with the help of North Brooklyn Parks Alliance, and a lot of that maintenance. So, I can do great things. Appreciate it.
Yes. Hi, I'm a neighbor, but I also just want to say that although big staff, it's also us. I live here, and so when I see that it's dirty, we might hold skateboards. We bring over to sweep. And it's just like at any park, if you see something that's trash, and of course, I know it's over. We're so glad that it is being used. And for that part, I feel like you guys do a lot, but it's also up to us to clean up the trash. And it's also up to us to take something and to sweep up. And, I've had so many birthday parties for kids in parks that, even in the winter, and if there's snow, we go and skate at McCarran. We are out there and we shovel the snow. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but these are our backyards too that we have to take care of. And so I understand about the noise. I hear it too. I get it. And so, but the thing is sometimes that happens is that we get really upset and we don't say it. And I think, okay, and now it's been said. And so now we know for next year if there's different things of planning or different time caps. I get it. It's great. But I think that it's, I don't know, is that lame? It's up to us as well, as the community to pitch in. That's what I wanted to say.
So just in regard to the noise, because I think this is an important thing from the speaker standpoint, the audio coming from the shows, but I appreciate what you're saying, and honestly, I have a small child too, and I'm driving nuts. So having data for understanding when and where there is noise coming to a certain place will allow us to refine the systems, and not just myself and elements that I'm involved in, but for any event and anything that has to do with amplified sound, to allow a change to the system, because sound is fickle, it changes with wind. There's a lot of ways in way there are different audio waves, whether it's a C-rated audio or A-rated audio, it has to do the way that someone's singing from a microphone or the sub level that's coming out of a speaker. If we know a specific place on Hollow that there's an issue, that's something that we can actionably address.
Which is why we have that map. It's really not a prop, it's really a means for us to get those locations in what's hopefully an easy way for you all to provide.
So how are you going to, okay, what about traffic?
Actually, yeah, could you guys speak a little?
Use your human voice. Use your adult voice.
You know, if you get the call, the steps that you can take at 1 a.m. or not 1 a.m., 9 p.m. You were mentioning sound levels. Is that communication that happens? And then another thing is, one neighbor mentioned more programming in the park for our community or for the immediate neighbors. So is there a way that people can plug in and can you guys facilitate that? Like, can you contact Brooklyn Parkland?
Yeah, so those are kind of two separate questions. And the first is about sound. And I imagine what we're calling the hotline would act as the same way as what we've been doing for folks who contact us with our cell phones, which we actually do go to that location as it happens. And if someone's willing to talk to us, or like Lynn said, even monitor inside, that is something that we do and have done. Anytime we've received a complaint, so that's what we would be doing. And so, we have had instances where we've gone and recorded. We have a database of recordings and decibel readings for every single event. And, when that happens, there have been instances when we've turned the music down because it's a way that is at a level that is too loud, or it might inform a future production setup where, again, as Kyle said, you can manage things. Sound is something that you can manage from things like speaker direction or a lot of technical things that he knows more about than I do, so I would let him to speak to that. The second thing about community programming is that, we provide a huge amount of community programming, mostly in stewardship programs throughout the neighborhood and on this site. More cultural programming is something that we're definitely hoping to do. I have a cultural background, I come from the arts, and so when I first started this job, I was really into the idea of a lot of cultural activations, a lot of public art, and to be honest, the pandemic changed my mind on that, in that I felt I wanted to use our resources toward direct services like horticulture and operations, so that our parks are clean and beautiful and of a certain standard. And once that happens, at that point we can activate them with programming. And I think we're on our way to doing that. If anyone's interested in doing an event, we do have an email address. It's book@mbkparks.org, where anybody can fill out a very simple form to host an event.
Where's the Queensboro president on this? Where's Donovan Richards on this? He oversees other side of the bridge. Where's his take on it? Where is Donovan Richards' take on this? But Donovan Richards.
Reynoso's take. Reynoso. Maybe Reynoso. What does Reynoso? What does Reynoso have to think about this?
Do we have any other questions or comments from neighbors?
Well, why you? We vote here.
So provincial Lincoln wrestler.
Who's in charge of capturing music and the level of the sound? You said that it goes to 100 decibels.
He doesn't want to be a
Huh?
He doesn't want to be a
Yeah.
Would you say you're in the middle of the box? Even if it has to be lower, that if one needs to have it blasting.
So if we measure the sound right now, it would probably be around 50 decibels just because of the traffic going by. So, when you're actually in a space, it's 80 just because of the traffic. So
we have a truck.
When you go inside of a space and you're standing in a vicinity with the speakers, it's at that point that it's 100 decibels, and that is for the people. And when you, the people who are attending it, right? When you leave the park and when you start to walk up here, that's what Lynn was describing, where if you're walking across the street, then what's the measurement? When you're walking down to the first intersection, what's the measurement? And by the time you walk here, you should not be able to hear anything. And so if you do, then we are here and we communicate with them. The event producers, so the folks putting on the show, are the ones who do the sound, right? They are the sound engineers, they're the ones manning the record Jimmy Jams.
It's called the soundboard.
The soundboard.
Record Jimmy Jam.
But we, as the park manager, oversee that. And that's why we are the ones who go out into the neighborhood and manage sound so that we can say, this is too loud, turn it down. Or this intersection needs additional power, put another person here. We do work with the police department on these events too, both in traffic management and in event management. We would love to have more police resources, but we work with them on every single event, past a certain size.
So what about traffic mitigation? Won't you ban box trucks? From the box trucks, ban them from this side. We just heard it. They just came down here.
Should we ban trucks? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's impossible around here. It's industrial.
The neighbors who have come tonight to share their feedback. I know Katie's going to lead a tour for folks who want to experience the whole park. But I know that we've got specific addresses that we need to do more testing at for this woman on Monitor Street, And if anybody else would like to have sound testing at their door, then we will do all kinds of committed to doing that for the remainder of the season. Please let Lynn know, is that right? Lynn will help make sure that happens. And it sounds like
I'm not upset. I'm just
crowd management that we need to do on Apollo Street in particular. So we'll make that a big priority. If there are other streets where crowd management and noise and people are leaving from the shows are a problem, please let us know so that North Local Parks Alliance and their partners can follow up aggressively on that. Lynn is the right person to follow up with on specific issues so that we can follow up and try and make sure that they get better. There's a few more events this season, so we'll have an opportunity to get your feedback on how things work. If there are any issues, please call in real time so the North Brooklyn Parks Alliance can try and help and address the conditions. And then we'll follow up after this season and make and adjust for next year. But I really do want to thank residents from Beetle and Apollo and Monitor for coming out, and Queensland, many Queensland folks and Housemen for sharing their feedback and being with us tonight. And join the tour and let the North Brooklyn Parks Alliance team know if there's anything we can do. As the woman in the back, I can say more eloquently than anyone else tonight, the resources that are generated from these concerts make a real difference in our parks and in the conditions that we all experience in our parks. And so it's not to say that we want to cause any issues in the neighborhood as a result of the events here. We don't. But this is a party with a purpose that really improves our experience and our parks and our community, including this park, where you're all many of the close neighbors and Matt and others get to enjoy it on a regular basis. So go check it out. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Council member, one more question. That's why I raised this point about a listing of the events.
Get that nigga. Kill him now. Don't leave him.
Both did just to know what's coming.
Yeah.
Working on our website.
One more question. Are you part of the government now? Because it seems like Wicked Wrestler, his office doesn't want to do their job, and he's delegating all responsibility to your nonprofit.
We're what's called a public-private partnership. So we're a nonprofit organization. Internationally, that might be called a non-governmental organization or NGO.
Yeah, NGO.
Meaning exactly, it's not.
But this is becoming way too incestuous and integrated now. It seems like you're doing everything that you're supposed to do.
Well, that again, the concept of public-private partnerships and that systematic approach to the city isn't really part of the agenda right now.
It also seems like you're also doing the jobs of the state senator and the state assemblywoman wherever, and for some reason they're not here and they should be here. It's really unaccountable. Your staff is here.
Link, thank you. Link is over there. I want to take a tour. You want to take a tour? Let's take a tour. I'm taking a tour.
We already did the tour.
Let's right here. Let's take. Link it right there.